Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the fourth Conversations on Leadership and Equity. My name is Adriana Rains. I am a LeadBoston alum. I actually was in the same cohort with Alexandra, so this is really exciting. And I am currently the engagement manager at YW Boston. So Conversations on Leadership and Equity feature a candid conversation with a distinguished LeadBoston alum, and it provides us with some valuable perspectives on leadership, equity, and social change. Our guests will share their personal stories, discuss their work, and reflect on how the LeadBoston program has shaped their leadership journey. Today, we are beyond thrilled to be in community with Alexandra Valdez, who was recently appointed, congratulations, as the Director of Cultural Affairs for the City of Boston. This is a newly created office within the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet. And in this role, Alexandra develops, implements, and evaluates culturally competent programming aimed at fostering a sense of belonging in the city among diverse cultural communities. I have so much that I can tell you about Alexandra, so I'm just going to share the next four things. She was awarded on the Latinos 30 Under 30 by El Mundo. She was awarded under the 50 most influential Latino leaders by EVA, that's Inquilino Boricuas en Acción. She was also awarded under the 30 Under 30 Power Leaders for El Planeta, which is another Spanish media company. And 29 Who Shine Future Leaders by the Mass Department of Higher Education. I cannot even begin to understand how you have achieved so much in such little time. And I am so thrilled, that we were able to reconnect and that you are here. So I would like to begin, hearing from you, thanking you for making time in your busy schedule as you're running from one meeting to the other and trying to find parking. So I will start, with asking you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your new role.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this. I think one of the first things that I love so much is always just talking about the great work that we do at the city, but at the same time, just also amplifying amazing programs like LeadBoston. So I am so thankful that you thought of me for this. So thank you so much. I think, where do I start? Let me see. So a little bit about myself. So I was born in the Dominican Republic. I came to Boston, United States. Boston was our first and is still our home by the age of 10 with my dad. My mom was already here in Boston. It was sort of like, right, any great immigrant story. He was settling and making it for us to come home. And I had the pleasure of being reunited with my family at that age. I have two brothers, Jesse and Jeffrey, and I am the oldest and the only girl. So always get to play that big sister role, yes, which is so fun. And I have a almost 3-year-old, which will be 3 in October, which I am so excited for.
Congratulations. Oh my God, you have a full plate.
I do. It is, you know what? I feel like it's sort of what keeps me going, right? And it's that sense of always saying, creating that sense of belonging, but better yet, making sure that because the work is personal to me.
Yes.
From so many different levels. It's so personal. This is the Office of Cultural Affairs was really much an opportunity of how we think about uplifting all the different cultures and all the different individuals that we have in our city. And it's a way for us to really think of how do we look at equity and how do we look at the work that is centered around Mayor Wu's vision of creating a sense of belonging for everyone from a very cultural perspective. So in the office, as of right now, we have 5 different cultural advisors. We have a Latinx cultural advisor, we have Haitian, Vietnamese, Cape Verdean, and the Caribbean. Those are just right now, just 5. Obviously, that's something that can change as time goes by. But we refer to them as advisors, as they are experts in their fields, to really help us think how we are better serving our community in the city and generating policies and programs to better uplift our culture communities throughout Boston.
Wow, that sounds totally amazing. And the representation of having these advisors, in the office, who can better, not that one person represents the whole culture, but at least they can bring in their perspectives, and what they think based on their connection to the community would be best, as opposed to you making the decisions. It's more receiving the feedback. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And it gives us an opportunity to just also connect with so many groups. I mean, this week alone, right, we are getting ready for Dominican
Yes.
celebration on Sunday. Well, this whole week, basically, right? So
Yeah.
it gives us an opportunity to meet via our Latinx advisor, right? Connect with the organizing committee, the committee who's focused on arts, the community that's focused on sports, and really think like, how do we bring the city together to do a lot of this engagement? Then next week we are getting ready for Juvet and Carnival in the city. So collaborating with the Carnival Association, collaborating with organizations like Bisoka, with Miss Shirley and others, like to really think of how we are putting those events together is amazing. But at the same time, it talks about like that cultural exchange that we can
Yes.
do to really think of how we're better supporting and serving all the different communities in our city.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm getting from this conversation that you absolutely love your job.
I do. I
Yes.
mean, like I said, it's literally it's home, right? Like
Yes.
it's I'm a nature, it's what's that word? A habit of nature, right? To really think of what is it that I look at it from this perspective. Like when I first immigrated here, I think of those who helped me and those who supported me and
Mm.
those who supported my family. So now what does it look like for me to be able to give back to that community that sort of welcomed me and my family with open arms? But how do I do that for those who are basically doing the same thing that I wanted to do, or sort of coming into their city and wanting to make Boston home?
Yes, that is powerful. That is powerful. It's like a cycle, you receive and you give back. And especially in this, everything that we're dealing with now,
Right.
to hear you bring in unity, bringing people together, it's like music to our ears with everything that's going on. Thank you so much. So, Alexandra, before you had this role, you were the executive director in another department at City Hall, for the city of Boston. So, can you tell us a little about how was that decision made for you to move from that role into this role?
Yeah, so I was executive director of the Office of Women's Advancement,
Yes.
that focused on so much amazing work, from focusing on maternal health to focusing on menstrual equity, period poverty, to focusing on supporting childcare providers, to even thinking of how we are fighting the gender wage gap in our city. It was beautiful work. I think one of the great things of being able to work for the city and for such an amazing progressive administration is being able to also think about progression and think about what's next.
Yes.
When the office was sort of being created and having and being in different conversations, it was also like, who do we find? It's also a great fit that's been doing this work. So I think looking at the progression, that all the amazing work that Women's Advancement did,
Mhm.
versus looking at what this amazing new opportunity it brings, I think it was just a amazing sort of segue to think about what's next,
Yes.
into my career path, and also into focusing on how we can continue to push the mayor's agenda forward and her vision for how to make city a city of belonging for everyone.
I like that, a city of belonging. Yes, I gotta
Yeah.
write. I gotta write that down. A city
And
of
there's a
belonging.
slogan, right? Create,
Yes.
making Boston home.
Yeah, I love that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I keep saying that I'm never going to move out of Massachusetts because I just love, the work that the city is doing, individuals like you, leaders like you, like no matter what's going on in the world, we'll still focus on making our place home for everyone,
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know.
I always say, every single day you go into your space, right? To think about how you're creating new opportunities to better support, right?
Yes,
We come in every single day and thinking how we're creating new initiatives and pushing forward and uniting others. We have, this, I always use this example, like we have our parks department that comes into the office every day and thinking how we can make our parks more accessible. Or, like if you think about it from that perspective and you look at um, everyone's role, it's how do we really think of when we're walking through the door every morning, what are we doing to really make it into a form that we're how are we affecting our residents? I think last week I had the chance to go to Fitchburg. I was speaking to a class at Fitchburg High School. And these are all high school students who some do have interest in public service and some don't. And one of them said to me, well, how do you make public service in a space where, like, how does public service fit if you don't want to think about going into politics? I'm like,
yes,
well, if you think about it, everything is like, everything you do is politics. Everything you do affects people. And I
yes,
said to them, if you look at a private company, you're going to need a CEO. You're going to need a CFO, right? The city
yes,
has a CFO. Our mayor is sort of like our leader, right?
yes,
You're going to need someone who's in charge of human resources. We have someone in charge of human resources.
yes,
If you start taking a look at it and you
yes.
look at like when it comes to roles and positions, we have sort of like a little bit of everything when it comes to how to really think about moving a city forward.
Wow, I love that, especially when talking to, a graduating class, because it's especially the younger generation, when they think of politics now, it doesn't give them a good feeling because of
Right,
everything that's going on. But when you rephrase it that way, or you frame it that way, that politics is public service, is the administration. You're in charge of this particular city and the people who live in it, and your work every day is to figure out how to make it better,
yeah.
for the people who live there. So your analogy of comparing it to like somebody who runs a business, is right, spot on. But I will add to it that from knowing you and other people in the administration, it's not just running a business,
Right,
it's running a business plus more, because you're also bringing in, the heart
right,
and that compassion and that understanding, which I think it's a perfect recipe, for
right.
that indicates why we've come so far in the city of Boston,
Right. Yeah.
you
I mean,
know.
completely. I mean, you think about like all of our work that we do, it's like every organization, if you think about from nonprofit to private to even startups, right? Everyone has a different function. And
Yes,
everyone has a different function and how to sort of make everything whole. So
yes,
everything we do, it's sort of for the greater good of our residents and
yes,
obviously to make their lives easier and better every single day. But at the same time, we are all working together to make that happen. The same
yes.
way that nonprofits do, the same way that other organizations do.
So,
It just happens that we are in public service and we are involved in a lot of the political work that gets done throughout.
yes, yeah, yeah, you're in the hard arena, in the real arena. Dealing, it's admirable. It's admirable. But I want to come back to you. Tell me, and I know that we were together, and actually when we went through the Lead Boston experience, it was, I think we were coming out of COVID.
Yes.
Oh my God, it was it was very challenging times. But I wanted to ask you, how did that program influence your journey, and just shaped, if anything, or enhanced your approach to advancing racial and gender equity?
Yeah, I think I was talking to actually Matthew,
Oh
who's in our
man,
class. He's
yes.
still working for the city. Me and him were having a conversation earlier.
Yes.
He's working with our public service, What's the team that focuses on how to really think about safety and public service in our city. Amazing.
Oh,
Maybe that's your next
maybe.
interview, but
I just wrote his name down. Yes.
and we were talking about that. And I think one of the things that I personally took from the program, so for me, it was a little hard, right? Because the city was like 100 miles an hour during COVID and how to do an emergency response. But at the
Yes.
same time, how was I also keeping up with the program? So
Yes.
so for me, I think what was very, and to this day, I still think about it a lot. It's just like being able to see and hear everyone's different perspective.
Yes.
Because we had so many different people and individuals in the program, and
Yes.
people who were not even from Boston,
Yes.
which I think even makes that perspective even more richer. So
Absolutely.
it really helped me open my eyes and my ears, right, to listen to this point of, Mike, what are you doing in your cities? What are you doing in your prospective areas that sort of can help or align what we're doing? But at the same time, it also helped me have difficult conversations that we had in our class, right? About
Yeah.
race, about police,
Yeah.
about public service, about services, that
Yes.
it really put me in a space where it was being vulnerable, but at the same time in a
Oh,
space where it also taught me to have those hard conversations,
yes.
to look at it from a perspective of how each individual is also giving, right, into their perspective spaces, but at the
Yes.
same time also teaching me the importance of being able to understand different perspectives, even when having difficult conversations.
Wow. Wow. That is rich. Yeah, that is rich. And it resonates. It resonates because I remember you running in, running out, because you were getting calls, like you said. And thank you, by the way. Thank you to you and the administration for everything you did during those, very challenging years with COVID and the ramifications that we're still dealing with in our communities. But you're absolutely right. Being in a room that otherwise people that you wouldn't have met if you weren't in that program, and to learn and also to observe other people learning who might not have lived experiences, the same challenges that certain groups face. So seeing others learn about that, and give those aha moments, that you could see in people's faces, like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, and it's always good when you can see things from different perspectives and different lived experiences. So let me ask you, do you go by Alexandra or Alex?
Really depends. I'm comfortable with both. Alex,
Okay,
Alexandra, both
okay.
work.
I should have asked that before.
Okay.
Okay, but thank you definitely for sharing that. Now, what are some key lessons that you've learned? And I know there are many, but a few that you can say you've learned in your tenure with the city of Boston.
Where do I start?
I know. Yeah.
I think if there is one that I have learned and have always carried, is how to advocate for myself.
Oh,
Um, I started working in the city at a very young age. I started interning in city council when I was like 16, 17 years old.
wow.
I started interning with Counselor Matt O'Malley at that time.
Yes.
And I remember when I first came into this space, he was also, I also worked for him all throughout college. So I would literally go to school Monday through Friday. And then on Friday mornings, I will take the commuter rail all the way from Fitchburg, Mass to City Hall to work Fridays in the office.
Okay.
And I would do that literally a couple days throughout the month, um, or as needed during my vacations in the holiday, and it was great. So, and all that to say that at a very young age, I have been able to be in spaces where not everyone looks like me, right? Like not everyone speaks like me, not everyone thinks like me.
Yes.
And being a Latina and being a woman and a woman of color, per se, in those spaces, sometimes not being able to voice or even think of, am I saying the right thing? Or is
Yes.
this going to be perceived okay if I say this? Weren't always thoughts of mine that I had. And as progression came and I've been in other spaces, sort of leaving behind that, what if I don't, what if what I say is not the right thing? Or leaving behind that fear has
Yes.
definitely been the thing that I have learned the most. And at the same time, also telling myself that this is why I need to speak up. Because since no one else looks like me or thinks like me or has lived experience like I have in our community, I can bring in a different perspective that others might not be able to see or might
Yes.
not have at that time. So being able to learn to advocate for myself and be heard and be seen, I think it's definitely been one of the most things that I say that I have learned with.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And to hear from somebody like you, so young, that you've already figured that out, because as you might be aware, for a lot of women, that's something that we're still working on, especially us, the older generation. So it really makes me happy to hear somebody like you, that to me seems very young to already be so wise. But then hearing how you've been involved in politics since you were age 16, now I'm curious, why?
I don't know. That's a good question. Well, I do know. No, I'm lying, right? I think my biggest thing is always I looked at this as a way of how do I give back? And that's always the way that I looked at it. I looked at it in a way of, okay, if I am involved, I'm going to give an example. If I'm involved in this neighborhood association that's really fighting for this park to get redone, I know that I am going to benefit from that park. I know the kids down the street are going to benefit from that park. So I need to make sure that my voice is present to make sure that I also like let others know or let whomever is in charge of fixing the park that the things that we need to do. So I have always looked at from very young, I have always been, and I think this goes with a lot of immigrant kids, right? I have
Yeah.
always been my family's translator. I have always
Yes.
been my family's like, Ale, búscame algo en el internet, because yo no sé cómo hacerlo. Like my parents were
Yes.
asking me. And to this day, it still happens. Um,
Yes.
so I always also looked at it as a way to be an advocate for myself, for my family, but also for others who might not have the opportunity to do so. So I remember when I got my first chance to volunteer, my first chance to be involved, I always looked at it with a lens of being able to help others and be able to give back.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I hear that. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, if it's just the way that we were made, if it's because of what we went through in our personal lives, that we understand it and we want to give. But I really, that resonates with me, like our whole lives since we were young, were sort of shaped by our role in our neighborhood.
Right.
So just like you, I remember being the translator, going to help somebody with to the welfare office, things like that. And that just sort of, it was just a natural flow and natural that we would gravitate towards roles or opportunities where we're serving the community, serving others. Yeah, so that makes that I can really understand that. Now, let me ask you, Alexandra, what advice would you have? Like you said, you spoke to the students at Fitchburg, and the power when you speak, because I've heard you speak, is it's just amazing. It's like, oh my God, all this wisdom and this just woman powers coming from this young person, and I don't mean that in a bad way,
No, 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 no,
okay,
no.
because I know you're a full grown woman.
No.
But, to already have that mindset, that we are here, this is what I came to this world for, this is what I'm going to do. Wherever I am, this is my home, and I want to make it that way for everybody else. So what advice would you have for aspiring leaders, for other maybe 16-year-old Alexandras who are thinking about, they're passionate about making change, about racial equity, gender equity? What would be your advice for them as they go through their career and their choices?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I can go back and tell my younger self something, but also look back and take it as an advice, will be one, always find a way to find a mentor. I think that for me was very helpful. Whether if it's someone you look up to, whether if it's someone you're seeking advice from, that was something that was very powerful for me. Was being able to have someone or multiple people, because I know I have multiple people who to this day I still call, I still
Yes,
meet with, I still engage with, because you learn something new every day.
absolutely.
That to me was very helpful. If anyone has the opportunity to do that, please do that. I think that's so powerful. But at the same time, I think if I can give any bigger advice is making sure that you are making space for yourself and believing in yourself. When we sometimes, and again, I speak for myself, be in place in spaces where we are not usually welcomed, right? Where we are not usually seen or heard, making sure that you are walking into that space knowing that you are going to be seen, you are going to be heard. It's so important. And assuring that you are there not to make space, but you are there to create space for you and for those who are coming behind you, or for those who are in front of you as well, to make sure that your voice is heard, but most of all, that you are making yourself known, that you are important and you matter. And that to me is something that if I can say it has helped me, and I hope that it can help others too, because I know it's really hard, right? When you, even to this day, I walk into spaces where not everyone sort of might have the same mentality, but yet I'll be walking into spaces when I'm the only woman, I'm the only woman of
Yes.
color, right? And how do I make sure that that scenario does not affect my voice and does not affect what I'm feeling or what I am getting ready to say in that meeting? So making sure that I have a way of telling myself, hey, Alex, you matter, your voice matters, and whatever you have to say in this moment also matters. That's something that I always think about.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and so very important because by being sometimes the only one in the room or one of a few, it can be intimidating. Like you said before, like, what do I say? What if they think what I say is just not important, So gaining that confidence, to actually be yourself, advocate for yourself, and advocate for others
Right,
without being deterred by who else is sitting at the table.
right.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Which I saw that I remember when you were the executive directors for the Women's Advancement Office, a lot of the work that was done there was geared towards that. How do we uplift women so that they remember what they're worth, what we're worth, because we're not hearing this all the time. So
Right.
your time in that office, which I think was like over 3 years, was
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. So congratulations on that and everything you did for
Thank you.
to raise the voices of women. And I appreciate you also making the time and space to speak to upcoming rising, citizens, so that they can also find their voice and know and be contributing, to what in this case, what the city of Boston, what our plans are, to make this a city of belonging.
Ah, see?
Yeah,
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so Alexandra, thank you so much for your time. This video, I will share it with you. That I'm going to have them, you know how they edit it to make it look cute, and then I'll share it with you, because your words, I think, and then I'll share it with our YW Boston community. Everything you said today, I think it's really important for individuals to hear. I'm even thinking about our young girls. We have a leadership program for girls, for young girls. It's school-based. I think, you know, hearing from you what you had to say today will be really useful for them, to see somebody who looks like them, somebody who's young and passionate and doing this work since you were 16.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean,
yeah,
I'm always up for it, especially for the YW and for LeadBoston. Like, please let me know. I'm always happy to
yes,
help.
I know, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well, Alex, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you immensely for this opportunity. I'm sure that we will have more opportunities, and I will see you Sunday.
So you're walking with us on Sunday. Good.
Yes, for the Dominican celebration on Sunday with the mayor.
Amazing.
Yes.
Can't wait.
All right. You have a good rest of your week, and thank you so much, Alexandra.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.